Have you ever had the wrong idea about someone? The day I moved into my new apartment building, I noticed him immediately. A tall man with a permanent scowl who lived across the hall. He was always dressed in black, had tattoos covering both arms, and never returned my friendly good mornings. My neighbor Stacy warned me about him the first week. "That's Vincent," she whispered. "He's bad news. People say they hear weird noises from his apartment at night, and no one ever sees him during daylight hours." I laughed it off, but then I started noticing things myself. Packages delivered at odd hours. The sound of heavy objects being dragged across the floor at 2 a.m. Once, I saw him in the parking garage loading what looked like heavy metal containers into his trunk. When he caught me watching, his eyes narrowed, and I hurried away. Things escalated when I came home late one night and found Vincent arguing with someone in the hallway. "You can't keep doing this," the man hissed. "Someone's going to find out." Vincent grabbed the man's collar. "No one's going to find out anything," he growled, then noticed me frozen by the stairwell. The other man hurried away while Vincent stared me down before disappearing into his apartment. The next day, I mentioned the incident to our building manager. "I'm concerned about Vincent," I said cautiously. She rolled her eyes. "You and everyone else. But he pays rent on time and hasn't broken any rules." That night, I heard a crash from Vincent's apartment, followed by what sounded like muffled crying. I paced my living room, debating whether to call the police. What if someone was in danger? I finally worked up the courage to knock on his door. No answer, but the crying continued. I tried the handle. Unlocked. I pushed the door open slowly. "Hello?" The apartment was dark except for a light coming from down the hallway. I followed it, heart pounding. The crying grew louder. I turned the corner into what should have been a bedroom, but instead was a studio. Art supplies everywhere. Canvases stacked against walls. And Vincent, sitting on a stool, head in his hands. He looked up, startled, eyes red. "What are you doing in my apartment?" Before I could answer, I noticed the painting on his easel, a portrait of a young woman with Vincent's eyes. "My sister," he said, following my gaze. "Today's the anniversary." He wiped his face. "She died 5 years ago. Cancer." I stood there, speechless, as Vincent explained that he'd been a corporate lawyer until his sister got sick. He quit to care for her, and after she died, he couldn't go back to that life. "She was the artist," he said. "I never picked up a brush until after she was gone." The metal containers I'd seen were art supplies. The late-night noises were him rearranging his studio. He worked nights because of chronic insomnia. The argument I'd witnessed was with his art dealer, who wanted him to create more commercial work instead of the memorial pieces for his sister. "I'm sorry," I said. "I know what you thought," he interrupted. "Everyone in this building thinks the same." He gestured to the walls covered with stunning portraits. "I sell these anonymously. My dealer says my mysterious background adds value." He laughed bitterly. "Apparently, people pay more when they think the artist might be dangerous." I stayed for hours as Vincent showed me his work. The pieces were breathtaking, full of grief, but also celebration of his sister's life. The next day, I brought him coffee and apologized properly. 2 weeks later, he helped me hang shelves in my apartment. Now, 6 months later, Vincent's become one of my closest friends. He still dresses in black, rarely smiles at strangers, and works at odd hours. But I know the man behind the scowl, the one who donates half his earnings to cancer research, who teaches art to kids at the hospital where his sister was treated, who still cries sometimes when he paints her face from memory. Last week, I overheard a new tenant asking Stacy about the scary guy in 4B. I interrupted before she could answer. "That's Vincent," I said. "He's an incredible artist. You should introduce yourself sometime." Sometimes the most beautiful souls wear the most intimidating masks.